that we have just folded and ironed. So the first fold I'm going to show is called a mandala fold. We fold from the crease. So we have 36 inches on one side, 36 inches on the other, and where we folded it in half, that edge we're going to start from. So am I going to be right in the center, or am I going to be a little off center out?
I'm thinking right in the center.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where specifically to start this fold. Oh, we're a little bit off. It's okay. The good thing about tie-dye is it's meant to be, it's not a perfect science. Don Baker is doing perfect science. He's painting. He's cheating, actually. He's not cheating. But yeah, so we fold these and iron them. And then we fold them once more. So we have gone from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 8. So we have 8 creases in here. So that little triangle is, and then we have another set of 8. So there are 16 creases in the whole piece. I think that's probably going to confuse people, but so again we iron.
And is it important to have all the folds completely perfect?
Again, you can't get tie-dye perfect. If we were to get some machine that would do a specific fold, but so no, you want it to be a little imperfect, but you can get it close. But it doesn't need to be perfect. So here's the tricky part that I try to tell people. So we want to make sure to have access to the fabric that's inside here. So instead of folding this over and trapping off all of that open fabric, we're going to fold from here. Some people try to do this with gloves on. I would not try to do it with gloves on. You want to use your hands and play with it as little as possible. The more you futz with it, the more that it will be a pain. And as with, well, I don't know about with all fabrics, but definitely with silk, you want to have steam.
And so you're tamping down, you're actually not pushing the fabric, you're putting it on top and pushing down.
Well, we can, this iron is a little sticky.
Oh.
So if I had a different iron that wasn't being so sticky for some reason, probably because it's just really hot, which is good. We want it to be hot. All right. So that's the mandala fold. So once we do what we do from here on out, there's multiple things, and I'm going to show you something specific. So alright, I have a yellow highlighter that's water-based, and we are going to mark it up. This particular fold I came up with because there's another fold that I like to use that I was asked not to show people, so I came up with something different. Alright. Basically, we're going to take this yellow and use it as a guide, and we are going to, using our finger on one side, we're going to pinch and gather that line, the fabric, so it looks like a line. See how that looks like a line right there? And then we're going to tie it off. So I'm used to doing this by myself there. I don't recommend people do this by themselves when they first start.
You tie it really, really tight.
You can tie it as tight as you want. I would suggest that you tie it pretty tight.
And why is that?
So you don't want it to unravel as you're working with the rest of the silk. So you can see that we have all of the silk, and we're going to be moving the silk around to get these different things tied. So the tighter it is, the less it's going to unravel.
And you go around twice?
If I'm doing this by myself, I'm definitely going around twice, because then it'll help me with holding the fabric. Right, so now I don't need a finger to hold that tight. I can...
And why do you tie off the edge?
Why do I tie off the edge?
Well, the loose ends.
You mean, why do I cut them off?
Yeah.
I just don't... I want to cut my fabric so I can use the string. You can... Sometimes the strings will be a catalyst for getting dye on them and flapping to a different part of the fabric. We don't want that. So again, make sure that you have all of your silk, and you're going to line it up and make the yellow look like a line. Do you see that?
And you're trying to have even gathers when you do that?
Yeah.
This is to prevent the dye from going into a different section?
Yeah, you'll see. It's more to give us because the dye will go wherever it goes. If you put too much of it, it'll go past that. But the good thing is it, if you just put enough, it won't go much past it. It'll stop there. But this gives us our pattern. You don't have to iron the silk. There's actually a fold that I'm going to show you here in just a few minutes where we don't iron the silk at all.
But if you don't iron it using this fold, what happens?
Well, the thing about it is I like a little bit of consistency, and silk dye is kind of like ants in that it will travel down any crease it finds. So if you have thousands of creases, you're going to have thousands of lines that you can't plan for. So one thing I will point out here is I keep on using the continual piece of string as opposed to cutting pieces and using them. I see people that do that a lot. I have to say I did it for years. You have so much extra waste. So doing it this way, well, yeah, of course it makes a difference. It's just a matter of the pattern that you want. So, you want the ties to be close to one another, and I'll show you what I'm talking about close in just a second. You want them to be close between the ties. So this part right here is close. So I'm sure that I'll have some that aren't so close, and there's a way that you can fix it. Maybe I'll make one not close and show you. Just to make sure that you get that on tape. Smushed together. What's smushed together? What are we talking about smushed together and crushed up?
Well, you're
The
saying
silk?
that you want it to be close together?
Is that the ties?
The ties, yeah, so the space between the tie right here, this part right here. The space between the ties should be as close as possible.
You mean here and here?
Between there, between there, between there. Between the ties, the individual ties. So right here, yeah. I'll show you, I'll make one specifically not so close, and we'll, again, especially when you get down here, you've got a lot more silk underneath. Make sure that you have all of your silk, that it hasn't like bunched up, or only you have half. You want to make sure that you have all of your silk. And pleat in a line, following that line. And normally I'd have people doing this if I had a class. The people that would be here would be tying this instead of me. Give them hands-on opportunities. So again, we're making sure that we have all of our silk. That piece was a little bit further down. You see, if I lose that, then I'm not going to have the same line. So make sure that I have all of my silk.
And how many lines should you make? Does it?
This is just one pattern that I've made. You can make the lines anyway, and as a matter of fact, you'll see here in just a second. We're going to do a different technique. This, working with lines, oftentimes people will use like a thin fabric, and they'll trace a pattern, and they use a string and thread a needle and pass it through some pattern. They pull that tight and then pull the fabric down to squish it up, and that would give you an alien head or different. We're going to actually do some hearts, I think, here maybe.
Yeah. I
Or
didn't.
circles.
I tried that technique. I forgot what it's called, but it didn't seem to work.
Shibori.
Shibori, yes.
It's hard to do when you have so much silk. So you can see we're struggling because we have 16 folds of fabric, 16 thicknesses of silk to.
And then the dye has to get through the 16 layers, right?
Right.
Does it become more difficult as you go along from tip to end? Because
Yes.
there's so much material?
Yes. So we're actually, right now, we're hitting the end of all of the fabric, and as soon as we get much past here, we're not going to have 16 folds because the fabric only goes that 36 inches. We've traveled past it, or we will in the next fold. So from here on out, we're talking about the outer edges of the fabric, and it's not going to be on the base of the flag, and the base of the flag being, if we have a 36-inch flag and we grabbed it right in the center like we did, that gives us 18 inches. So an 18-inch circle from there, we're at about 18 or 19 inches right here. So the pattern will stop repeating. It will still repeat, but it won't necessarily be on all of the entire piece, because you start running out of fabric. I know that doesn't make sense, but yeah, so all right, so here I left a space. Do you see how this space right here looks like it's about 1/4 of an inch, whereas this space right here, well, actually that looks like 1/4 of an inch too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fingernail and pull the fabric on either side to make these knots closer. See? Not necessarily the knots, but the strings. So this part of the fabric right there, right now it's about 1/8 of an inch. So that's actually not bad. Alright, so we come to the next one. Oh, that one's widened on us too. So I'm using my nails to pull the fabric through, or to pull the string down. So I know that's going to offset, and the same thing here. That's 1/4 to 1/2 inch. We're just going to take and pull the fabric through. Actually, that's a really tight knot. We're not going to pull through.
So with the strings being so tight, that lessens the concentration of dye?
We will talk about that in a second, but what's going to end up happening is the fabric is going to swell up once we put the first amount of liquid in there, and it's going to, once it's saturated, it doesn't necessarily want to take much more dye, or it doesn't want to take much more liquid. So the knot allows us a place for saturation, and it will slow movement of other moisture down or into different areas, just because it's simply saturated. So if you have a lake on one side of you and a lake on the other side, and you put more water in one lake, well, a little water will trickle over until the lakes become even, but then it'll stop trickling. You know, that's kind of what we're talking about. We're going to have lakes. We're going to put dye on either side, and they're going to meet in the middle, and they don't necessarily go one way or another, because you already have a moisture content on one side and moisture content on the other. Whereas if you just leave it dry and you were to add dye on one side, it's going to move into that other area because there's no moisture. It's looking good to move. That's the scientific term for that. So, but yeah, it wants to move into to an area where it can move. It wants to move. So